Grab your tea, America, because I track 935 housing markets across the United States, and here is the National Housing Market Update. So of the 935 housing markets that I track, 55% of them are now in what I call very low demand buyer market territory, which means that less than 40% of homes that hit those markets actually find a buyer. And in most markets, it's about 15 to 30 houses out of every 100 will find a buyer. And so it's pretty grim in a lot of the markets across the United States. Then we're talking about 262, I think, balanced markets that we have where it's still kind of healthy-ish, where it's like half of the market, half of the homes will find that buyer. And then we have 162 sellers markets where it is still pretty insane and there's a lot of demand. If you put your house up for sale, usually about 70% of those markets are finding buyers right, or 70% of those listings, I should say, are finding buyers right away. So if we're still talking about who's leading the charge in the market slowdown, the larger markets that we're seeing the leading the charge in low buyer demand, I'm trying to pull up my numbers here. We're seeing like Miami, Florida, Dallas, Texas. I have to pull up my numbers and I can't find them. So anyway, a lot of those markets are still leading the charge. They're the Sunbelt markets. So we're still talking like Phoenix, Atlanta, Georgia, Dallas, Houston, Miami, Denver, Colorado, LA is starting to fall. So all of these markets are now slowing down where only 30-ish% of the listings are starting to find buyers. Now, in some of these markets, if you've watched any of my other videos where I go into each market separately, I usually give you a list of hot zip codes and a list of cold zip codes. So in any of these markets, there's still going to be some hot zip codes where things are still kind of bucking the trend. But for the most part, it's pretty cold across the United States. So some markets to look at. Again, if you've been watching me for any amount of time, I've said the Midwest has been pretty solid in seller market territory, and I am starting to see that crack. So we're talking about like the eastern part of the Midwest of like, I guess Ohio, is that considered the Midwest? Ohio, Indiana, definitely starting to crack in those two states pretty heavily. So Dayton, Ohio, Indianapolis, Indiana, Columbus, Ohio, Fort Wayne, Indiana, we're starting to see price cuts jump to 60% in these markets, which means that prices, like sellers are either so delusional there because it's been kind of really hot, they've hit that max boiling point and like the buyers are not having it and they can't raise their prices anymore. So they're starting to see that pullback and buyers are starting to revolt in those markets. And I think, overall things are still selling pretty quickly in those markets, but prices are coming down and they've kind of hit the max temp there. We're also, some other markets to keep an eye on that have been cracking for sure that have those lower buyer demands, but we're still starting to see price reductions ramp up, is going to be Portland, Vancouver. They have about just over 8,000 listings and 53% of them are seeing price cuts, as well as we're seeing Salt Lake City, Utah, 52% of those listings are getting price cuts, and then Winston-Salem, North Carolina, again, a little bit smaller market. It only has about 2,000 listings, but half of them are also seeing price cuts. And then Knoxville, Tennessee is another one to keep an eye on. About 3,600 listings there, and about 52% are getting price cuts. So lots of things happening, still lots of major shifting to the downside in these markets. And so if you're a buyer, really just continue to keep an eye in your favorite neighborhood. Start watching these price cuts if you're in one of these larger markets that are seeing this downward movement. It is something that will continue going into November and December because the markets naturally slow down around the holidays where people aren't thinking about real estate. They're thinking about their family and everything. So if you have a home to sell, understand that half of the country is in a market slowdown. And so really just keep an eye on your listing and how it shows and how well you're priced, and be competitive if you're in one of these really slow markets. So thanks for listening. We'll chat soon when the next housing data gets released.